Seeking the Wise.
With Aaron and Alexander discussing the Just philosophy.
Covering self-development, emotional processing, conscious relationships, and 5 levels of overall wellness. Hello and welcome, everybody. Alexander here with my main man, Aaron Keith.
I am the main man, Aaron. Guys are here again.
Yeah, so welcome. We're looking forward to a wonderful episode today. We're going to get into the differences and the situations that approval and support create. And I think this is going to be a juicy topic. It's a topic that's been on my mind. I've been talking to my sons about and many clients. And so let's see if we can't dissect and bring some clarity to what is support and what is the need around approval.
Yeah, and I've talked about my struggles with approval a bit on this podcast in the past. I'm really interested in diving a little deeper in a different way than maybe we have in the past. I think part of my struggle, and just when we talk about this, Alexander, is obviously the difference between what approval is and what support is. And I think, just thinking about it, people will be like, oh yeah, I know what the difference is, but we may intellectually understand what the difference is, but I feel like when we think about like what feels good, I feel like they both kind of overlap, because you really want support. You really want support from, if you're in a romantic relationship, from that person. You really want to feel support from your parents, from your siblings, and, whoever's really close to you in your tribe, in your circle. That's really where you want to feel that support. But approval, I guess to me, feels like in that same feeling, feels a little warmer. I guess it's like another level of support. Support could be, I support you in time, I support you in money, I support you in energy to do that. But approval is like you're on the same wavelength as somebody. So I guess in a way it is interesting that we want approval so bad, but when it comes to like different viewpoints or different perspectives, we know that it's okay if we have different perspectives than other people. We may fight to convince people of things that we believe, but intellectually we understand that other people have different views, and that's okay, but we still get caught up in that. So it is kind of like a metaphor for the difference between the two.
Yeah, and I think that's what's going to be the intention of today's podcast, is just bringing a little bit of clarity to how the Just philosophy approaches these two terms. And I think it is natural for most people to seek approval, but many times I think in that seeking approval, they skip by or don't recognize the support that they have. And so many times I feel like people can be being supported by people around them, but they're not necessarily getting their approval. And instead of making the most of the support, they just focus on this lack of approval. And I want to give like a little analogy here of, like, say you have a strong-willed child and they're 5 to 7 years old. And by strong will, what I mean is they like experimenting. They like learning things on their own. They're okay with failing or messing up because they see it as a way of learning. And so the father may like go to that 5-year-old and say, I'm going to teach you to ride a bicycle, and I'm going to that you need to do this and this and this and these steps. And the child's just sitting there going, no, I can do it myself. And so the child takes off, and when that child takes off on the bike, they get about 15 or 20 feet and they fall over and they skin their knee. Well, see, the support role is that the father goes and picks up the child and blows on the knee and tells him he's going to be okay and supports him in that slight injury. But then the child says, let me go, Dad, let me go. I want to get on the bike again. I want to go. And so see, he's having his own view of how to do it. So the parent may not be in agreement. He may not be in acceptance of the way that the child is doing it. So that means that he's not giving the child his approval. But then when the child falls, he's there to support the child. And this is a beautiful example of helping a person at a young age learn to build character. Over time, maybe that child, after it falls enough, it'll learn to consider other people's input a little bit more. But see, that's different than seeking their approval. And I feel like many of us, and I'm including myself in this, we were raised in a way to where we sought out that approval. And almost that if we didn't get that approval, then we felt like we were doing things wrong. And that's what I want our listeners to realize, that if you're living your authentic self, you're not going to get society's approval. You're not necessarily going to get your family's approval, but you can get support from people in society. You can get support from people in your family. And I want to just differentiate that most of us are striving for other people's approval. And I want to suggest that pay attention to the people that support you, whether they approve of the way that you're doing it or not. That is a opportunity to grow your character, to stand in your own integrity about how you want to approach life or approach a situation. And that doesn't have to revolve around like judgment. You'll see many times when people don't get someone's approval, they feel judgment. And I want to help to stop that. That if you don't feel someone's approval, that doesn't mean that they're judging you. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But that doesn't have to be your concern. It can be that, hey, does this person support me in the direction that I'm going? If the answer is yes, then let go of approval. If the answer is no, then certainly let go of the approval. If the person isn't going to support you, and if they're only going to support you if you do it their way, then see, their approval is a trap. And I think that this is a good place to bring you back in, Aaron, and see how this is, resonating with you. We haven't discussed this really at all. We just decided to take this as a topic as the podcast. But so far, is that resonating with you? And give us some feedback.
Yeah, I feel like you just tapped into my childhood. I think a lot of my relationship with approval issues comes from that very similar scenario that you illustrated for us, where I have a memory of one Christmas morning as a child getting some type of gift or toy that you had to put together. And I was really excited to put it together. And I wanted, now that I'm going to use this term, because in my mind, I wanted my dad to be there to support me, to watch me try to put it together and be there if I had trouble.
Right.
Instead, he took it, kind of pushed me off to the side, and I had to watch him put it together.
Right.
And I assume, like, if we want to play, bring in approval here, he wouldn't have approved of how I tried to put it together. So he just did it himself.
Mm-hmm.
So those kinds of things have stuck with me, because then when I was older, I had a house. My dad was there helping me I think we were renovating the kitchen and putting cabinets in, and he would just tell me what to do. And finally I was like, I want to do something here. I don't want to just do what you want me to do. Like, it's my house. I really appreciate you being there, but I want to do something. And so I feel like parents that maybe are of I don't know, like afraid or don't want to watch their kids fail, they will just do stuff themselves. Or I mean, I think my dad he just knows what he's good at, and he doesn't understand the energetic part of it, of me wanting to do it and me needing to try to do it. Because he's always, again, growing up, he would always kind of tease me about making money with the computer versus with my hands, and calling me a prima donna and stuff like that. And but like, if you're never giving me an opportunity, if you're never actually teaching me hands-on, then how could you expect me to learn and be interested in that stuff? If you're always pushing me out of the way to do it yourself. Because I do learn hands-on versus just watching somebody. So that's what that initially brings up for me, and I get to kind of see that separation a little more.
Yes, and see those types of experiences ingrain us to, carry that self-judgment. I have another client that was told at an early age, they're in their 70s now, but they were told at an early age by their father that they weren't mechanically inclined. And so every time something messed up, whether it was on the car or something in the house or whatever, his father would never even give him a chance to, similar to what you're saying, to try to fix it. So he was very limited in his mechanical skills as he grew up. Now, something that I want to point out here is that proper support takes patience. And see, a lot of parents don't carry a lot of patience with their kids. So they utilize that recognition of needing their approval to expedite things. So that's why it takes longer to teach somebody to fish than it does to just go catch some fish so that the the family can eat, so to say. So I'm looking at support in a very wide range that you're there to correct if asked, but at the same time, you're trusting the process of failing over and over. Because remember, in the wise understanding is that failure is just an opportunity to grow. So see, no judgment should come with failure under the skies of support. That the person that is playing the supportive role rather than the approval role is allowing those so-called failures. They know that it's part of the process. So this is why I'm wanting to highlight, when you have people around you that support you in your direction, it should be fairly insignificant of whether they approve of what or how you're doing. That support is so important. And many times people can be guilty for bringing judgment to where there's not approval, instead of just saying, well, this is something that they've got to experience. And I feel like I have useful information, so I'm going to stay supportive, even though they're not meeting that situation or that person with the way that I would. And so, see, right away, that's admitting that they don't have my approval, but they certainly got my support. Just like if, that 5-year-old kid just says, Dad, is this the way that you would pedal? I might say, well, no, son, I would do it like this. And then he might go, well, this is the way that I want to do it. And I say, okay, well, I trust that you're going to figure that out, that either your way works or my way works. That's part of the support, the patience. And the beauty is that sometimes then that child finds a new way to create something, and the parent can be educated or inspired by that through support. So I want to separate here that it takes effort to not give somebody your approval, but at the same time not to judge them. That's the supportive person being there. When judgment comes after the non-approval, see, then the support isn't going to be there because people want to prove themselves right. So now we're back into the world of right and wrong. And then from a self-development standpoint, I want to get across that this is why people judge themselves so drastically. It normally means that they didn't get their parents' approval throughout their life. So see, when you move past approval, then it can be incentive for your self-growth that whatever you do is accepted, but it's not enough. So see, when you don't give yourself approval, it simply means that you accept yourself. Now, acceptance is very important. It's very different from approval. But see, if I start doing something new, whatever that may be, it may be playing a brand new instrument, I'm going to set up some structure and some discipline, and then I'm going to accept that, well, today I'm probably not going to approve of how far I get, because I know that if I practice it tomorrow and the following day, and I trust this process over a long period of time, remember, gradual changes over long periods of time equals lasting results, then that's the person that's going to get better drastically fast. But sometimes we can be guilty that when we get someone's approval externally, or we give ourselves approval, see, that can make us stagnant, or it can make us not work as hard. And this is what I talk about in doing the work, where people want a pat on the back for every little step. that they go through. And see, they're looking to get approval and be at a plateau and just kind of stop there, to where all the greats, no matter what we're talking about, whether it's sports or it's intellect or anything, they don't stop with giving themselves approval of what they're doing. It's an urge to always get better. So I am coming from a standpoint of work on accepting ourselves for who we are and where we are, then work with structure and discipline and recognize the people that support you, whether they agree with it or not, and move forward with structure and discipline and effort. And that person will get better at whatever they work towards. But the person that's seeking approval, see, many times when a person doesn't get approval, they stop with the effort because they have a saying of like, what's even the point? If I'm not going to get my dad's approval, then why do this? Well, the why is so that you learn. And maybe that you learn past your father or past your sibling or past these people that aren't giving approval. But that support is so important. And I feel like people are stuck in not approving of their own actions because that's what they were trained by their family. And so it dissipates their interest in even trying. And I see this rampant through my clientele. And so that's the main thing that I want to point out, is that accepting ourselves is very important. Accepting ourselves where we are is very important, but not necessarily approving of ourselves or looking for others to approve, because that can give us a feeling of a plateauing and that we've reached somewhere. And we come from the understanding that self-development is a never-ending journey. And so I'm hoping that this is helping to differentiate these terms between approval, support, and acceptance.
I like bringing in that approval around the self-judgment part of it. I think that, I don't think we've ever said that before.
Mm-hmm.
I think not having your like family's approval or your best friend's approval or even society's approval is one thing when you're going about your journey. Like I have a lot of fire energies, so not having people's approval, it bothers me and I have approval issues, but also at the same time, I also have a fire where I can like twist it and be like, well, I don't care. Now I'm going to do this just to prove them wrong, that type of
Mm-hmm.
thing. So it is kind of like a love-hate energy with that. But now, is it different when you like, do you need your significant other's approval? I feel like that's where it gets challenging for me. It's not clear because if you have a relationship where you're both trying to have like shared intentions, a shared vision, then there are things you kind of need them to do to go along with that. And if they decide to make other decisions that are not in alignment with the intentions, that's where like you can still support them to go and do whatever that is. And again, like I get that, oh well, then if you need to go and have that experience, then maybe we shouldn't be together, but like let's take that out of it and just focus on maintaining the relationship. Like you guys are working towards a shared vision of what this is, but they make a decision that kind of takes it one way. Maybe they tell their boss that they will take a different job and it's like a little farther away or something, and you're trying to be more healthy and have more time for healthier things, but this is going to add to the commute. So it's like an extra hour because it's an extra 30 minutes each way. So maybe use that as an example if you want, or
Mm-hmm.
I'll offer another example, but just something where it's not breaking the relationship up, but it's transitioning it without communication, or maybe there was communication, but you still left the decision up to them, hoping
Mm-hmm.
that they would make the one that you wanted.
Sure. And I think that's a good point to bring up. And even with this of taking a job that creates, more of an obstacle in the relationship, whether it's around communication or time or whatever it is. See, a person needs to be honest with themselves when they don't approve of something external. Can I accept this? See, just because you don't approve doesn't mean that it has to stop there. There's this level of acceptance of, okay, well, I don't approve of that, but let me work with accepting this. And can I accept that, yeah, their commute's going to take an hour more each day, and we had agreed that we were going to spend more time together? And see, here's a key word is agreement. Agreements create expectations, which creates approval situations. And when we make these agreements in relationships, many times people make agreements through conversation rather than gathering all the information. Like if you're working with somebody that has, say, discipline issues, and you know that they want to be more disciplined and you want them to be more disciplined, but if they haven't shown you discipline up to that point, see, you're making agreement based on what somebody wants, not around what they have proven that they can do. So, see, as soon as I get involved in or caught in some type of agreement with somebody, I pay attention to more than just that conversation. I pay attention to the last 6 months to a year that I've been around this person and whether they've shown any actual application of this conversation or not. So, see, I might be in a conversation with somebody that says, yes, I'm going to start being more disciplined. And Alexander, I'm going to work with the 5 levels and I'm going to do that every morning for an hour and a half like you do. See, as soon as they start saying that, I'm going to reflect on, have they shown me over the past year that they can carry on discipline? If the answer is no, see, then I want to give them support. But I'm not going to set myself up to tear them down because they fail, because I believe just what they said. So that's where the approval comes in. But see, I can accept, well, this is important to them in this conversation. They haven't shown me anywhere in their life that they carry this level of discipline. So I'm going to support them moving forward. But as they falter, do I need to point out that they're failing? That could be approval issues. What it is for the person that wants to point it out is an acceptance issue. It means that you've gone along with an agreement based on what somebody wants rather than what they have proven that they can provide. And so again, these types of agreements is what sets up these approval issues. And in relationships, some need to have these types of agreements. I'm just suggesting to the one that is looking to see things clearly, you don't just base your support or your acceptance around what somebody says. You pay attention to what they've already proven that they do. Again, it's more important what people do than what they say they want to do. And so in that situation, that's where acceptance can be much more useful than approval, because then it comes in that, okay, well, then if you don't follow through with what you said that you were going to do, then I'm going to disapprove. And many times this is going to cause conflict. But instead, if you're able to say, well, it's wonderful that you want to make that agreement and make that promise to me right now. I'm going to ask you to not make that promise and to just start practicing this and know that it's an intention of yours and you're going to work towards it every day. See, that's working more in acceptance, because again, when people make agreements, typically they're working with what they want to do. That does not mean that that's what they're able to do. So take this opportunity to ask me to clarify anything that didn't hit home with you or that it created more questions.
Would you say that if you make an agreement that is adding like a pressure, and then that's more likely to cause that person to fail because they have this like, oh, I said this is my word, and this person's going to be upset if I don't meet it. So now there's more pressure, and some people can be motivated by that, but a lot
Right.
of people, it just puts more pressure. And if they're somebody who like crumbles under pressure, then they'll just judge themselves that they haven't started it yet or whatever, and then eventually fail. Or I mean, it could motivate them, but I think it might be like a 50-50 chance.
Yeah, at best, most people will crumble under those expectations. For some people, it does feed, but normally they have a heavy competition in them, the people that feeds. But again, here we're looking at many people want to build their relationships off of agreements. And what I'm suggesting here is when somebody shows an interest or you have a conversation with somebody and these types of agreements start to come up, then you might want to redirect that to, hey, make that promise to you. I'm not looking for promises here. I'm looking for you to do what you want to do, the way you want to do it, and I want to support you in that. And see, if that person doesn't make a promise, but they start actually applying it every day, then what that does is it starts to build respect. And when somebody makes a promise and they don't follow through, guess what? It tears down respect. And from the Just Philosophy's point of view, I still question that respect may be more important than love in relationships. And respect is built around people typically doing what they say that they're going to do. That's a big part of building respect and building integrity. So, see, for me to, like, say, have a partner, the 5 levels is very important for me to practice every morning. So I exemplify that. And whether it's to Aaron or my mate or to my sons or to my clients, see, I don't want to build that expectation. I want them to know that I'm in support of you, however you approach this. Please don't make me any promises that you don't feel like you can keep. If you feel engaged to make a promise, then make a promise to yourself. And sometimes that can help people when they're wanting to wane away from a discipline and to say, no, I promised myself that I was going to work out for 20 minutes every day. So I'm going to do that even on days that I don't feel good. But see, the more pressure, like you were saying earlier, that we make those promises to other people. And with some people, that can create accountability. And I'm a fan of that. But the person needs to be able to hold themselves accountable. See, it's really about holding yourself accountable rather than the other person holding you accountable. Like I've said in um, past episodes, that I say things that are important to me to change in my life to hold myself accountable, but not to use them to hold me accountable, but just that, hey, I've said this and my word is very important. So today, if I hadn't have said this to my sons or to Aaron or to somebody I care about, then see, I wouldn't have done that workout. But because I did, and they may ask me about that today, see, that pushes me past that point of myself many, many times. But see, it's not their judgment that I'm concerned about. It's the judgment of myself and letting myself down around something that was very, very important. So I call that accountability. And accountability can be in many, many different forms. Some people, it's athletes, coaches hold them accountable, school systems hold them accountable. You know, in military, it's the drill sergeant that holds the soldiers accountable. So it can be that external, but I'm looking here that we want to work toward accepting ourselves, which means that we're respecting ourselves and living in integrity, that we only talk about things that we're going to do or are doing, and that we leave ourselves room for our humanness, so to say. And if somebody asks you, well, did you do your workout today? And you're honest and you say no, and they give you a look of judgment. See, again, hopefully that can incentivize rather than tear you down and just realize, no, I said it to them and I didn't do it. So you know what? Tomorrow, no matter what, I am, and the following day and the following day. But if that person just goes, well, no, I'm a piece of crap because I didn't do it today, and now they think I'm a piece of crap, then that creates this downward spiral situation. So I think a big part of this is realizing that we talk, most people talk about what they want way more than practice what they want. And here's what I'm suggesting just to live more in integrity, to be very careful about what you say you're going to do and when you're going to do it. And if you start to, consider even pausing and go, you know what? I'm going to show you. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. So see, all of this is getting away from needing approval. It's that you're utilizing promises that you make to yourself to communicate those less, unless you want that to hold you accountable, and put more into action. So bringing that back to the relationship is that, see, all we can do from a loving space is truly support. If we get into approval, most people are getting into judgment there. So again, to be with somebody and they say, oh, I promise that I will do this, right away, I want to relieve them from that promise with me and say, please don't promise that to me. Show me that that's important to you. It is important to me. And I say, do I exemplify what we're talking about? And I want to hear yes from them. If I don't, then I want to look deeply into that and go, okay, well, where do I need to tighten up my intentions and my integrity here? So I think this is a big deal in a lot of relationships, because a lot of relationships are built off of so-called agreements. And it's a beautiful concept, but it does bring approval issues. It does bring judgment. And I happen to feel that the one that knows more in the relationship carries the most responsibility. So again, see, it's not always equal when you're making agreements in relationships, because one person may be able to hold their agreement because they've been practicing it already. But the other one is agreeing to it mainly because maybe they're in fear of losing the relationship or losing the opportunity. So they will say, oh, I'll do it. I'll do it. And then it makes both parties kind of relax. But see, this person hasn't proven that they can do that yet. So again, this is why I feel like support is so much more important. That they might say, okay, Alexander, I'm going to work out 6 days a week like you do. And I say, okay, that's beautiful that you want to do that. Can we start with 3 days a week for 3 weeks and then move it to 4 days a week? See, take what they want to give you to get your approval, and then consider cutting that in half to show support. And then see, if they can't do the 3 days a week, they're surely not going to be able to do the 6 days a week. So this is an opportunity to be able to work with your partner to see how they want your approval and what they want to reach. But then the supporter is realistic in that, pays attention to what they've been able to do thus far and says, hey, that's beautiful that you're saying that. Can we just shoot for this? And I will do it on my end if you'll do it on your end. And they might say, well, you already do it 6 days a week. And I said, then I will stick with that. And that'll be as hard for me as this 3 days a week is for you. But the intention is within the next year that you reach that 6 days a week. And to me, that'll take the room for all of this judgment as they're working through the process away, take the pressure away. And they might say, well, I only did it 2 days this week. And see, rather than getting disapproval, you just say, well, that was really close to 3. So I have faith in you that this coming week, you'll be able to do it those 3 days. And again, that supportive communication without the judgment of not meeting someone's approval.
Thank you for tuning in and listening to this free full version of the Wise podcast. Now, before we get back to the episode, I just want to take a second and say, if you are loving what you're hearing, we do have a complete conversation premium subscription option where you can get all of our back 160 plus episodes to utilize and further your self-growth journey. And you can do that by going to the wisewisepodcast.com, click on the Get Complete button at the top, and follow the instructions. If you have any issues, you can reach out to me and I will help you take care of them. But this is for the serious individuals who are ready to take that next step, ready to make their self-growth journey a priority, ready to enhance their relationships all around, ready to accept the world for how it is and no longer be torn by the duality of the external reality. Oh, I like that. So if that's you, if you want to take that next step, consider supporting us on this journey and sharing this information. Now, if you're looking for a little more Alexander and maybe a private consultation, You can reach out to him at his website, thejustphilosophy.com, or email him at alexander@thejustphilosophy.com. On his website, you will see his different offerings, a variety of relationship coaching, energetic design consultations where we'll look at your human design chart and your destiny cards and provide a personal prescription for you. If you're in the North Carolina area, Alexander also has a variety of different sound journey events that are being posted on his website. He also is the inventor of the Vibertune sound therapy table, which 15 minutes on this vibrating table, listening to music that he composed, leaves you in a state of contentment. It feels like an energetic blanket has just laid upon you and you're back in the womb. It's a really great experience. So if you're in the North Carolina area and you want to reach out to him to even just ride the table, reach out to him at his email address. And of course, he has a variety of other tools and music that he's composed that you can get there. So anyway, with that said, I want to get you back to the rest of this episode and thank you for working on you. So it seems like the support angle here, if you're supporting somebody, it's almost like helping them manage their energy. It's like you're being consciousness for them in a kind of like a friend directive way and not adding to the friction. And in a relationship, would you say that this is kind of loosely based around freedom because you're not placing restrictions, whether it's like, I want you to do this in an energetic way, in an energetic direction? Would you say it is kind of around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly can be the case because we want to keep that pressure off of people that we love. Because to me, and from the Just Philosophy's view, the first definition of love is freedom, and that you want a person to come to that because they want to, rather than the pressure of an expectation from you. Because if they meet it with an expectation of you, it's not going to last. That's the thing, is it's going to have an expiration date to where if somebody does a change for them and you benefit from it, then they're more than likely to carry that on because that intimidation of the expectation, isn't there. And one other important part of this is, make sure if there's judgment happening and acceptance issues there, that you look and each person looks within themselves and sees the areas that they can tighten up. And see, it's not the fact that, like, say, okay, I've been working out consistently, basically 5 or 6 days a week now for a year and a half. And see, if I'm working with somebody that's just never worked out, and they say, okay, Alexander, then I'm going to match you and I'm going to do it 6 days a week. I might say, hey, let's start with 3 days a week and do that for a minimum of 3 weeks so that you can feel good about your accomplishment. And after 3 weeks, then go to four days a week for 3 more weeks. Again, it takes 3 weeks to create or break a habit. And so that's why I work with these 3-week intervals, and that hopefully that person can feel that support. But see, many times in that agreement, one person is already stronger in that area. So what I like to suggest is for the party that's stronger in that area to say, you know what, if you're able to do that 3 days a week, then I'm going to meditate for 15 minutes a day, 3 days a week for 3 weeks. Like, work to match that person with a similar challenge rather than they're the only ones with the challenge.
Yeah. So it
You're
feels
already,
like you're doing it together.
yes, like you're doing it together. But see, that's not tit for tat, so to say.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing. You find something that's equally as challenging for you as this is for them. And see, when approval is there, it's one person has already arrived at a certain point, and now they're looking down at this other person, waiting for them to reach that same level. But see, that to me isn't the same type of investment. It's find something that you find as equally as challenging and be willing to do that for those 3 weeks and stay in communication. Like, hey, I did my meditation today. Did you do your workout? Yeah, I did my workout. That was tough. And yeah, well, sitting still for 15 minutes was tough today too, but I'm looking forward to doing it tomorrow. And hopefully then the partner will say, well, I'm looking forward to working out tomorrow. And so I think that is, again, an example of support that stays away from the approval issues because you're not comparing apples to apples. You're actually comparing apples to oranges and seeing how that can relate. And you're putting yourself in a similar challenge as that other person. And to me, that feels more supportive rather than judgmental or seeking approval.
Okay. And real quick, because if I had this question, then other people are gonna have it. And mine, I kind of understand the answer, I think, but I know other people are gonna kind of might be confused with it because we talked about agreements in a relationship, and I feel like there has to be some sort of boundary or agreement or structure initially in a relationship. I think most people are like, you don't cheat, there's a list of things you don't do just so both people are under the understanding of what is the boundary, what does, the relationship look like. So we're not necessarily saying don't have those agreements, right?
Right.
Because those are shared. Like people come together, they're like, yeah, of course, we don't do that. And so that's a little different than what we're talking about here, right?
Yes, great point, because boundaries are different from agreements. Boundaries is something that typically the term means I'm not willing to budge on this. So see, if infidelity is a boundary and you're in an intimate relationship and you say that you want to be monogamous with that person and you make that so-called, see, I would call that a boundary rather than an agreement, because if they go and they do experience infidelity, and see, it's not about judgment. It's not about acceptance. It's just that, well, we're not on the same page. So this relationship at this level is done. So that's the point of a boundary is this is something that I can't budge on because it costs me time, energy, health, money, something like that. It could be a boundary with credit cards, where finances are concerned. And then if that person goes out and spends money and gets into debt, then again, when you set a boundary, you need to be clear in what the cost is with that. Me, myself, around monogamy, it's that no, the cost is the ending of the relationship. Now, some people that get married and they say that no, once you get married, you stay married forever and you work through these obstacles. That's fine. They don't have to set that kind of boundary. But I want to separate with people the difference between boundaries and agreements. And agreements many times is just that, well, I like this football team better than this football team, but when two friends like different football teams, see, they can agree to disagree, so to say, that who's the favorite team, but they can still get together and enjoy that game. But if somebody sets in a boundary and says, "I will not watch Dallas Cowboys play," and then your partner happens to be a big Dallas Cowboys fan, that's getting into like being a little picky. We don't want to judge people's boundaries, but I think that agreements and boundaries have gotten mixed up with people. And the way that I separate that is boundaries, you're able to be clear when you set the boundary what the cost of that is. And agreements doesn't necessarily bring that type of clear vision of the cost. It's just hey, I want you to be more healthy. So I want you to work out. Well, okay, well, I'll agree to work out 6 days a week like you do. Again, hey, that's beautiful that that's what you want to do, but let's prove to yourself, see, not to me, but let's prove to yourself that you can just do it 3 days a week for 3 weeks. And then we'll slowly bring those increments up. But see, if somebody brings a boundary to a point of, no, if you don't exercise 6 days a week, then I'm going to end this relationship, or, then I'm going to go hang out with people that do work out 6 days a week, whatever that. I think it's important that that separation be there between boundaries and agreements. And the separation, the key point is that when you set a boundary, you're clear on what the cost is if that boundary gets crossed. And in agreements, people disagree day in and day out. And many times there's not a cost except for a level of approval. Many times is all that happens in a disagreement, so to say.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. I know other people will as well. Now, I just want to transition this conversation to the external, outside of your relationships when we talk about society's approval, because I think this is a big one.
Mhm.
And I feel like it's more of a thing now than it ever has been because we're so divided and the media is biased. So culturally, societally, there's this underlying current that these things are good and these things are bad, like these attributes or these preferences or whatever. So it's almost like virtue signaling, where if you support this cause, then you're a good person. If you
Mhm.
don't, then, you know, you're racist or whatever. I mean, there's all these terms being thrown around. It's so funny how people just, it's really like labeling and stuff, but there is this pressure to support all of these things that like everybody else is or that the mainstream is telling you should do. And all these companies now have whole programs to support these things. So it's like there's all this pressure that this will make you a good person in the eyes of everyone else in society.
Mhm.
Almost like a social credit score in a way. We talked about, I don't know, we've talked about it, but it's been on like allegedly China has like a social credit system or whatever. And, it's kind of, you can kind of see the beginning of one here
Mhm.
where now like your social credit score is just how people view you right now. And if you do the things that everyone else approves of, then, you have a high standing and
Mhm.
you may, at this point in America, you kind of go through life with less friction from society than if you have a different view. I mean, I guess it depends on if people know about it or how like loud you are
Mhm.
about expressing your opposing view. I don't agree with a lot, but I stay neutral and I don't externally voice my opinion as much as I used to. And I used to
Right.
try to convince everybody of my opinion,
'Cause right.
but I don't do that anymore as much, very, very little. But because I'm not interested in being in that friction. I don't necessarily wanna be viewed in that group anyway. I am kind of a contrarian anyway, but at the same time, like, it would be nice, it would be easier if, like, people saw things my way,
Sure.
but that's not enough to make me just go along with everything, especially when it definitely is not my authentic self, to go along with the things that I don't agree with. So it can be challenging, and to somebody who doesn't know themselves as much or understand what their personal like virtues are, I feel like it could be really challenging, a really
Mhm.
confusing time for people nowadays to just get sucked in supporting things that they don't know enough about. And not everybody's here to really get deep enough to make those decisions. But
Right.
I just see it as being a very confusing time for people with the tension and the pressure to support something,
Choose a
to
side.
be
Yeah.
valued in society.
Yeah, yeah, and then there is a pressure with that, and this is why the social media and the government are as powerful as they are because the outcast, it's so much easier to conform and to go along with the masses or the majority. But here's what I wanna bring up with that. All true artists create something typically that is different and not accepted, and pioneers the same way. A pioneer has to decide that they're not gonna go along with the norm, and they're gonna create something different and new. So any artist or pioneer has to deal with, guess what? Being judged and not being accepted. And but many times that new way, like if we even go back to the 90s in music, how the grunge and the Seattle music scene completely changed music forever. But see, they had to do a style that wasn't popular, that was resisted by the masses. And then slowly they gathered this following that just started growing and growing and growing. And whether that's in rap music or grunge music or rock music or jazz, see every great style. there was a pioneer at some point that decided that they wanted to not necessarily buck the system, but be their authentic selves. And that's what I want to separate here, that just because somebody doesn't go along with the norm doesn't always mean that they're a true rebel or a problem causer or something like that. They just have a different vision. And so I think everybody has to make their own evaluation, self evaluation about how much they want to be accepted by the mass culture, or how much that they want to show a new direction, a new example. And then a very important part of that is why. Why do you want to show this new example? And I know that my path has been to create different pathways and not to go along with the masses. But see, at the same time, due to the law of polarity, which is the second pillar in the just philosophy, that opposites have to exist. See, I stopped a long time ago trying to win people over. And I saw that if you're talking to the right person at the optimal time about the optimal subject for the optimal duration, there's going to be a resonance there. And so, see, I don't need to go try to convince people that don't resonate with me. I just need to find the people that do resonate with me. And somebody brings up a strong opposing opinion. That's when I want to go, hey, high five. You have to exist. That's okay. My view has to exist as well because it's opposite of yours. I'm not trying to convince you, and you're not likely to convince me. So, hey, let's sit down and have a nice meal and talk about another subject that maybe we can find similarities on. So, due to the law of polarity and opposites exist, see, I know that mass consciousness has to exist there. And it exists as long as or until somebody with a different vision comes along and slowly chops their wood and carries the water and provides a different way of looking at it. And so, we use the term of people waking up or people lifting the veil. There's many different terms or phrases for people changing their view or changing their conscious level of consciousness or communication or something like that. And these are all different stages. So the way of the way shower or the way of the true artist or the pioneer is not going to be an easy path. It's not going to be accepted by the masses in the beginning. But this is what feeds that artist or that pioneer, is that eventually they tend to make a statement if they stick with it long enough. But now let's rewind and let's look at Nikola Tesla and how he had so much to offer and was really trying to give the world free energy. But see, the bankers went to Edison and said, if you find a way to create this energy where we can charge for it, then we will put you in all the history books and that type of thing. So see, every pioneer and every way shower don't always get to reap the benefits of the seed that they planted. And so again, there needs to be a certain level of confidence, a certain level of integrity that whether you gain the benefits or not, some people look at their children or grandchildren that, hey, it's worth this cause to stand in this change for future generations, so to say. So I wanted to point that out, that every way shower and every artist don't always get appreciated in their time. A lot of the great art that we look at, paintings and that type of thing, a lot of those artists died poor and very unpopular. To see, the thing is that the true pioneer does not seek out for that recognition. They seek out to just pave a new way for people to grab onto when the timing is right. And now Tesla's work is huge and it's all over the place and it's in our cars and home electricity, and it's just going to keep growing in that direction. So see, he was an amazing pioneer that went through a lot of judgment, a lot of ridicule, did not get approval by very many people, but he still chopped his wood and carried his water, and he was very effective many, many generations later. So I think that's important for our listeners to hear, is that sometimes we want to look at why we're looking to create a new way. And if it's ego-based, you're going to suffer a lot more. If it's just that this is who I am and this is the way that I need to do it, and I'm not going to apologize for you people not understanding it, because I could explain it to you if you were just willing to listen, but you're not willing to listen. So, okay, I'm going to be comfortable being the outcast here and not accepted by the masses until I am or until I'm not. Some artists, musicians, or whatever, they may write and record music and it never be appreciated. But see, if that artist appreciated it, if they got the feel from that, then that wasn't wasted energy. So we're bringing this back around to the authentic self. And many people that follow the masses or choose to fit in because it's harder not to, they tend to be very unfulfilled internally. But see, they don't have as much friction externally. And a lot of people, it seems like they have friction externally and they're resisted. And, like Jesus, Gandhi, Yogananda, there's so many greats from the past that they see they were doing it for themselves and for the people that they could touch. And that's not ego driven. So whether it looks like they got the accolades they deserved or not, I happen to feel that they went out feeling good about what they did. And there's so many people that wind up being on their deathbed, wishing they would have done things different, wishing that they hadn't have gone along with their family or their culture or their society or things like that. And that's just one of the main things I want to point out here, that we're talking about authenticity of the authentic self and not just feeding the ego or playing a role.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this and you've made it this far, then you're probably one of us.
Yes, well
um,
said.
because I just see, and I know people would say that it's always been like this, and I feel like there's more information out there. More people are aware of the energetic side. More people are aware of emotional trauma. So there's that. But the other side of that is that there's a promotion of externalism with emotions, almost to the point where it feels like that there may be, I know there has been laws passed in other countries, not here, I don't think, but it feels like they want to pass laws that if you make somebody emotional, that you committed a crime. I mean, with different certain variables. But the media is also like teaching people to be outraged based on other people's perspectives and views, and that is just so mind blowing. Especially having done this work for 8 years and just understanding energy on a whole new level. Like I know for a fact that that's not truth. Like I
Mhm.
know that that's not how energy works, and there's a responsibility there. So it can be a little frustrating the other way, watching it become more and more divisive. Of course, like we can bring in pillar two around polarity versus duality, but
Mhm.
that the more I the more I see this side and dig in like energetically with a stance, then I'm creating the other side. But if I'm neutral around the view and I'm just like, well, it's like going outside and seeing the trees and saying that they're green. Well,
Mhm.
I'm not like, no, they're green, I'm walking around like that. It's how it's how we hold the energy, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm like, no, this is the way, then I'm creating that opposing energy and I'm not helping the world, I'm not helping that division. But if I'm just like, no, this is what I understand and I'm not coming from ego where I need to prove it, it
Mhm.
just is, then I am assisting this situation on the energetic grid by not adding to the fuel of the duality.
Yes, and, this is where we bring back the word support, that, if I give some information and a person has a completely different view because maybe they've never heard this other information. See, I want to support them to feel that, oh, I'm not pressuring you to see it this way. I'm giving you new information. Now I want you to go away with it, work with that, practice it, challenge it. If you come back around and you say, no, I agree with you, then I want to hear stories. I want to hear how you made that shift and, what you put into practice to get that. Because again, this philosophy isn't a belief system, it's a way of life. And so if you go and do something that I suggest and you don't get the results that you're looking for, then come back. Let's have another conversation. I've got more suggestions of things to try. And this is again why we look at the human design and the card system, to understand people are very, very different and they interact differently, they process differently. And all of that has to be okay. So part of being supportive is being a lover and allowing the freedom of that person to go try that. But see, if that person just wants to debate with me or argue with me without going and attempting that, because many times, most of the time when those arguments come, see, I've been part of that society. I've been part of our culture. I've developed and tried things the way that our culture suggests. I went way out of my way to develop and to learn new ways of approaching things. And I'm only going to be successful with communicating that with somebody that's at least open to the possibility of it. If they're closed from the beginning, this is where I stopped to where I used to be 20 years ago. I would go into that challenge and I would actually enjoy the debating, the arguing, and it was very ego driven to where now it's very simple. I've got some information from you and the person slaps my hand and don't want the food that I've got, and they spilled the food all over the floor. I'm not going to keep going and getting food and bringing back to them. See, I want to say, here's a plate of food, and I want to set it down and say, now please try this. This is food that you've never eaten before. You may or may not like it, and then walk away and give them the freedom to try that food or not. So I think that this is getting back to like on a subtle energy level. Most clients that I work with, they say that they wind up feeling worse before they feel better. And I say, well, the fact is that you're becoming more aware of what you've been carrying around and the battles that you've been having internally. And as you become more aware, it's not that things are getting worse or getting harder. You're just becoming more aware of it. So you can't become more conscious and aware of the beauty in the world without being more conscious and aware of the ugliness of the world. They comes hand in hand. Again, the law of polarity. So that's why when people say they want to seek consciousness or they want to grow, I say, well, prepare because that can be a lonely path. You're going in a different direction from your whole family, your culture, that kind of thing. And it can be very challenging. And this is also why I hold events and classes for people, like-minded people to get together and to communicate and grow together. So again, under the law of polarity, these opposites have to exist. Um, I have had somebody just recently as yesterday to say that, it's the worst that it's ever been. And every time I hear that, I've been hearing that since the 70s. And it just seems like every year it's just the worst it's ever been. And I told my client, I said, it happens to be the best that I've ever been in my life. And I say that from losing very important people to me to death and things not working out the way that I intended or the way that I wanted. But the whole point is that you either get caught up in the external and everything that's going on in the external, or you just use that for a mirror to gauge how you're doing internally. And if we just use the external for a gauge, it helps to keep us on track. But if we're looking for approval, then we'll get sucked into doing things that does not resonate with our soul. And this is the epidemic that we have with people being so unhappy in our culture because most people aren't following their authentic self or their bliss. They're fitting in as best as they can to get that acceptance. But if you ever experience true support, true love and support, that's a whole different game than looking for people's acceptance.
And we do have an episode called The 3 Questions for Finding Your Authentic Self, if that's something that you are currently on the market for. I don't remember the episode number, but you can just search that and it is available for everyone in its full form. I feel like that was a good conversation. I feel like we
Wonderful.
touched upon all different types of approval. I definitely have gained a new understanding of approval, and I see it as something that is like an active thing for me to do with other people versus necessarily my own internal thing. So
Well
it's
said.
more of like how I can help people around me with that
Yes.
to take the pressure off them.
And to wrap that up, I just want to remind listeners that stayed with us through this whole episode, look for those that support you rather than the people that approve of you. And the people that can separate those two, approval and support, I just want to say they're very special people and be sure to acknowledge them because when somebody feels that they're not looking for your approval, but they do receive your support. That's a beautiful relationship. And then the separation between agreements and boundaries. I think was very poignant to as well. So give us some feedback, listeners. Let us know what you think. We always love hearing from you. I want to thank Aaron Keith for his help, and not just in this episode, but everything he does behind the scenes. And thank you to all you listeners. Much love.
All right. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for listening to this free version of the Wise podcast. To hear the complete conversation and go deeper into the application of the tools and techniques of the Just philosophy, head on over to wisewisepodcast.com and become a premium member. You'll get to hear all of our complete conversations, including the complete episodes of our Inward Journey story series and our entire back catalog, and continue your self-development journey with us. We honor your dedication to self-growth, overall wellness, and continuing to ask the wise.
And remember, gradual changes over long periods of time equals lasting results.
Continue on your self-growth journey by visiting thejustphilosophy.com, where you are able to connect personally by booking a private consultation with Alexander in person, by phone, or Zoom. Uncover your authentic self more easily with a human design or destiny card consultation. Here you will gain information about your energetic makeup, personality, and your higher self, as well as navigating your way through your relationships. There are also multiple types of reports available for purchase that help you gain insight into your career, relationships, and opportunities for self-growth. The site also allows you to view a calendar of Alexander's live performances and class schedule, peruse other products such as shirts, CDs, and finally, the revolutionary VibroTune vibrational sound therapy tables. These contoured therapy tables allow you to bathe in a vibrational sonic bath of frequencies, bringing you into alignment on all levels. You will be feeling and hearing calming music synced through vibration and frequency. So again, you can grab all this goodness at thejustphilosophy.com, thejustphilosophy.com. The Just Philosophy, as discussed in this podcast, has been developed by Alexander over the last 25 years in his personal studies, private practice, and professional environment. The information discussed is intended for educational purposes only and is not meant as a replacement for conventional medicine. Just remember, knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. Seek the wise. We want to thank you for working on you. Keep shining your light and refining your vibe.